Chapter 4 is the Gospel of John, so keep in mind where we're moving on the timeline. So if John's written in 90, how long has Jesus been passed away for?
60 years.
60 years. So imagine writing a biography of someone who's been dead for 60 years that we could write about.
FDR.
Yeah, I was about to say Roosevelt. Yeah, is it like imagine the first presidential biography of a Roosevelt being written now, today. It's just an interesting thought. So I'm sure y'all, I don't mean to say like, y'all know this, old hat, but many of you have probably run into the term synoptic gospels, coming from syn, seen together, synonym, all these good Greek roots. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke, though different, all share this family of sources. They kind of have a general structure that looks the same, and then we get to John, and all bets are off. Like this one, like, you know, it's Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other one. So they call John kind of the maverick gospel. And I didn't know this. I learned this from the author. Every chapter in John contains sayings or actions of Jesus that are not found in the synoptic gospels. Every single chapter. So there is no messianic secret to speak of in John. John wants to lay it all out there. And he wants to talk about the mystery of this Messiah. And of course, we are familiar with the gorgeous poetry of the first chapter of John, which begins, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Which, on this timeline, where are we?
Creation.
Exactly. We are all the way over here at the beginning of time. John is taking us not, from Jesus' birth, or if you're Mark, from Jesus' baptism. He's starting at the beginning of creation to talk about Jesus being there. Is that high or low Christology? Very high. If you get to be present for creation, right? You are God. And so actually that is John's answer to who is Jesus.
He's a creator.
Jesus is God.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Jesus and God are one. I am one with the Father. Jesus is also, John cannot throw enough metaphors and symbols at trying to help us grasp at who Jesus is, which is so rich and so wonderful for us as followers of Christ to wrestle and to just learn from these awesome metaphors that John uses. So Luke talks about Jesus being the Lamb of God. And only in the Gospel of John does Jesus die on the day of preparation for Passover. So think about, when you think about the Last Supper, okay, just hang with me. I know, it's complicated. I had to read it about 3 times, but so everybody else, the Last Supper that Jesus shares with his disciples, that becomes the Lord's Supper for us, that Last Supper is what for Jews? The Passover meal. But for John, in the Gospel of John, he actually eats with them on the day of preparation for Passover, so the day before Passover. And so remember that the Jewish day starts at sundown. I may be secretly Jewish in my heart, because sundown is a lot better than sunup for me. So the day begins with sundown. So on the day of preparation, which was when the Jews slaughtered the lambs for the Passover Seder, Jesus eats he has the last meal with his disciples. He goes to Gethsemane. Then they wake up the next morning, which is still the same day in Jewish time. There's the trial and the crucifixion. So all of that happens on the day of preparation to make Jesus the Passover lamb in John's theology. As opposed to, in the other Gospels, they eat the Passover supper together with Jesus, and then things happen the next day. So it's just...
Couldn't it be a second Seder? There's 2 nights of Seder.
It could be. I'm just telling you what. I know that John's timeline is different. The Sabbath is different for John than it is in the rest of the Gospels. It's not necessarily that John had the wrong information. it's probably that John was telling us something that was more true than the bare facts, if you will. Like, you know how sometimes things it's true and it may have even happened? You know, like that's kind of probably where John is coming from. The celebration of Passover is, for Jews, is not about sin. What does Passover celebrate?
Deliverance.
Passover.
The
Jesus.
passing over.
Yeah, Passover, which was what?
Deliverance is being free.
Okay, where were we? Egypt. Okay, all right, good stuff. So yeah, it's about the freedom and the celebration of God's liberation of the Hebrews from Egypt. And so John is actually sort of bringing in the significance of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement and is all about atoning for sins. And so in doing that, John is John is arguing that Jesus is the true meaning of both Passover and Yom Kippur, that Jesus is our liberation and our atonement from sins.
Was that like beginning and end?
I don't know.
I was trying to think about
Maybe
the word.
more like the fulfillment.
Okay.
The fulfillment
Okay.
of kind of we could call it the Omega, like the
I
end
just
and the
wondered.
fulfillment of all those things. So by the time that John was writing in between 90 and 110 AD, Christianity and Judaism had some major tension. And from a Jewish perspective, Jesus is blaspheming God by claiming to be God, right? You can't think of a sort of more crazy blasphemous thing to say. And so John is just chock full of all these I am statements, which as Christians we love, but from a Jewish perspective, God gets to be I am who I am, right? That's not some human's job to say that. And in fact, it's blasphemy, it's heresy for a human to say that. And so you can see how that wouldn't really play. And so there is a lot of anti-Jewish parts to John that we have to wrestle with. The author does a great job of treating that, but I think about it as like, you know, things are kind of written right when mom and dad are getting a divorce, and so there's some things said that probably shouldn't have been said, but once history moves along, we realize they were both great people. It's all good. So just know that some things were sort of written in the heat of debate. Continuing on in that theme of Jesus being the Passover, Jesus in John provides the loaves and the fishes, just as God provided manna and quail as the Hebrews escaped from Egypt. And then he makes these I am statements that I am the bread of life. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. And so Jesus over and over again is trying to say that he is life and he is freedom, just as God gave life and freedom at Passover. And it's a fascinating section of the chapter that I'm not going to tease into the weeds on right now, but I loved how she went in and sort of explained how John was really taking other major Jewish holidays like the Festival of the Booths and really making and portraying Jesus as the fulfillment of those holidays. So spend some time with that because you've touched on those holidays in other Bible studies you've done probably, and so this sort of just took it to a whole new level with John. And then John plays a lot, and again, I'll say less than I could on these things, but he plays a lot with literal and metaphorical meanings of words. And the author takes a long time to look at things like, you know, looking at Jesus talking about water and then being the living water for the Samaritan woman at the well, or talking about physical sight and healing a blind man versus spiritual sight. And so then the man born blind story, you know, it's so annoying because in John, like, Jesus is always talking in these, like, super metaphysical terms, and the poor people are over there, like, so, like, I'm going to be able to see? And Jesus is like, I'm the light. And they're, you know, like, I mean, it just always seems like they're missing each other. And it's because Jesus is speaking at a very metaphorical level. Definitely do the worksheet on page 98. In this section, it is a wonderful, you can just have your own heresy trials after you do that. I mean, it is a fascinating test of sort of what do we believe about Jesus and what do we not believe, but it was a super fun one. So spend some time with it, and lest you think you're on your own, all the answers are on page 105. So you can discover which heresies you ascribe to when you look on page 105. And also, I think this is the month where you'll get to bring in Christmas cards and look at the Christology that a Christmas card you've received might portray. And I just think that's an awesome exercise to pick one that is sent and what does it say about Jesus? And that would be a great warm-up, or especially those of you that do a luncheon at your Christmas meeting to share a card and what that said to you.